In case you missed it, this week, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said he's willing to do anything, including threatening war, to protect Confederate history.
Monument. The Reconciliation Monument. It has been returned to Arlington National Cemetery following its removal in 2023. This is a Confederate monument. Many suggest it was designed and put in place to symbolize the reconciliation after the Civil War. It was taken away, as I mentioned, several years ago. Why was it important for you to bring that back to Arlington National Cemetery?
Because we recognize our history. We don't erase it, Will. We don't follow the woke lemmings off the cliff that want to tear down statues. We look at and learn from our history, all aspects of it. And so Arlington deserves to have, and we're grateful to the state of Virginia for partnering with us. It wasn't easy. We fought to make it happen. And the Reconciliation Monument will return to Arlington where it belongs, to recognize the service of Americans of all chapters. So we're not tearing stuff down. We're done with that. We're putting statues back. We're putting paintings back. We're recognizing our history. We're restoring the names of bases as we've done across the country, because we're proud of our history, as difficult as it may have been in some chapters. We're going to teach it, we're going to live it, and we're going to fight for it.
We don't follow the woke. Okay, Petey. Whatever. Hi, my name is Suri Crowe, and you're watching the MeidasTouch Network. So you heard that right. He's saying that this regime is going to protect Confederate history, teach it, even fight for it. Well, an independent commission recommended removal of that Reconciliation Monument in 2023 due to what they called, quote, problematic depictions on the statue, including whitewashed slavery carvings and depictions of Black people as supporting slavery and wanting to remain enslaved. Yeah, I would definitely call that problematic. Hegseth says it will be returning to Arlington National Cemetery at a mere cost of $10 million to us taxpayers. The Trump regime has also ordered the restoral of this statue by the National Park Service, a monument to Confederate General Albert Pike, who once wrote that, quote, white race and that race alone shall govern this country. It is the only one that is fit to govern, and it is the only one that shall. Well, alrighty then. Sounds like it fits this regime to a T, does it not? There's a theme running here. Well, when he wasn't busy putting top secret classified war plans on blast, Secretary Hegseth got straight to work undoing the work of a bipartisan congressional commission that renamed U.S. military bases after service members who weren't Confederate traitors. Retiring Republican Congressmember Don Bacon called Hegseth's decision to do this as, quote, stupid as hell. Here's Virginia Senator Tim Kaine questioning Hegseth on why he would go to so much trouble to restore these military installations after Confederate traitors, even going so far as to find a loophole around a law that bans any U.S. military base from naming bases after Confederate soldiers. Listen carefully to this exchange.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Earlier this month, you announced a plan to change the name of 3 Virginia military bases to restore the names of Confederate-era generals on those bases. You researched to find brave American soldiers with the same last names, Lee, Hill, and Pickett, who had not fought for the Confederacy and declared that those Confederate adjacent names would be restored. The problem is that you had to strip away the names of 4 amazing people that the Pentagon and local communities had chosen to honor at the Virginia bases. Van Barfoot, he was a Mississippi native, Mr. Chair, who came to Fort Pickett in the early 40s to train for war. He fought all over Europe in World War II. He won the Congressional Medal of Honor for his bravery. Leading his platoon in southern Italy, he killed 10 of the enemy, captured 17 more, and escorted 2 wounded Americans 1,700 yards to safety under enemy fire. Stayed in the Army for another 34 years, seeing action in both the Korean and the Vietnam Wars, and being assigned as the Army liaison to the Virginia National Guard at Fort Pickett. Long after he retired, he maintained his tie to the fort and to the Virginia National Guard. I was at the naming ceremony where this base, to which he had devoted much of his life, was named in his honor. His family was there, and they were so proud. Arthur Gregg served in the Army for more than 30 years, first African-American to reach the rank of brigadier general, first to reach the rank of lieutenant general, began as an enlisted, eventually decided to become a commissioned officer, went to Fort Lee for quartermaster training, quickly rose through the ranks as an instructor, even though he was not allowed to go to the officers' club because of the color of his skin. He finished his career in 1979 as the director of all Army logistics operations around the world. He stayed near Fort Lee in retirement, raised his family there, and was a continuous beloved presence until his death last summer at 96. He was actually at the renaming ceremony with his family in 2022 at this place that meant so much to him. Charity Adams. Charity Adams was an Army officer during World War II, the first African-American woman allowed to join the WACs. She was the commanding officer of the 6888th Central Postal Directory Battalion, a unique battalion composed primarily of African-American women, making sure that American GIs in Europe got their mail during World War II. Our colleagues, Jackie Rosen and Jerry Moran, successfully passed a bill in 2022, giving the 6888 the Congressional Gold Medal. Charity Adams was the highest-ranking African-American woman in the military at the end of World War II. Her family was at the dedication of Fort Gregg Adams, named in honor of these two trailblazing logistics leaders. They were so proud. Finally, Mary Walker, the only woman ever to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor. She graduated from Syracuse Medical School in 1855. She tried to join the Union Army as a surgeon, was turned away because she was a woman. But the need was so great, she eventually got hired at a military hospital in Washington and then was deployed as an Army surgeon with the Army of the Cumberland and the 52nd Ohio Infantry, becoming the first female surgeon in the U.S. Army. She served all over Virginia, including the place where the base is now named after her. She frequently crossed battle lines to treat civilians and even treated Confederate soldiers. She was captured a prisoner of war in Richmond until a prisoner relief president, Andrew Johnson, gave her the Congressional Medal of Honor after the Civil War. Why did you decide that these four patriots were not worthy enough to have their names on a base?
Well, Senator, as you know, this was never about the names of the bases they were renamed to.
So you don't challenge the worthiness.
Restoring all bases to their original name, because we're not about erasing history.
Okay, you don't care about their military record. You wanted to restore the Confederate names. When you called the Gregg family to tell them that their dad's name was no longer going to be on the base, what was their reaction?
Senator, the Army notified them of that.
You didn't call any of the families, and I've spoken with the families, and the families were called by the press. That's how they learned about this. They learned about it from the press. You didn't call the Barfoot family, the Gregg family, and you didn't call the Adams family. I told the families I'd ask you about this today. In fact, two of General Gregg's granddaughters, Avery and Sydney, are right here in the audience, and I want to ask you this as I close. While you announced that these brave men and women's names would be stripped from the Virginia bases, no orders to that effect have been received by the base commanders. In light of the patriotic service of Van Barfoot, Arthur Gregg, Charity Adams, and Mary Walker, I'd like to ask you simply not to issue the orders changing the names of these Virginia bases. These families, my Commonwealth, are very proud of these heroes, very satisfied with these names, and ask you not to change them. Will you honor these exemplary patriots and keep their worthy names in places on the bases they loved and where they served?
Well, Senator, we very much thank and appreciate them for their service, and we'll find ways to recognize them, but the orders will soon be going to those bases to change the names back to the original name that never should have been changed.
But you have the power to not send those orders. They haven't.
So to recap, Hegseth stripped 4 Virginia bases of the names of decorated service members, 2 of them African-American service members, all who served this nation with valor and distinction, just so he could restore the names of these bases to dead Confederate soldiers who fought a war for the sole reason of defending ownership of human beings. And not only that, he's such a complete cowardice piece of you-know-what that he didn't even have the class or the integrity to pick up the phone and call the family members and tell them himself that their their relations, their family members, grandparents, whatever, would no longer have their names honored at these bases. Like, just the disgusting cowardice and lack of integrity. I mean, it really makes me ill. And just for context, Pete Hegseth is covered in white nationalist tattoos that were considered so problematic, they prevented him from serving as a part of the National Guard for President Biden's inauguration. Deus Vult, which you can see there tattooed on his arm, that is a rallying cry for white supremacists, Deus Vult. And now he's running the damn Pentagon. So of course he's ready to go to war for defenders of slavery. That is how far we have fallen since November 5th, my friends. And you know what else is rich? Hegseth and Donald Trump are talking about how they want to restore history and heritage for Americana, whatever. Well, that's only for straight white Christian men. And let me be clear, not real Christians, but white Christian nationalist men. Because throughout our government, the Trump regime is ripping away the history of women, diversity, and inclusion. All mentions of women's, LGBTQ, people of color contributions have been stripped from NASA, the National Park Service, the Department of Defense. Hegseth has systematically purged the military of female commanders. He doesn't believe that women have a place in the military or anywhere else for that matter, except for in the home, knocking out babies. Women are being disappeared from the U.S. military command and the service. He's made that very clear. Hegseth ordered the Navy to rename a ship honoring gay rights activist Harvey Milk. And this week, the Air Force issued a memo denying full retirement to transgender service members with 15 to 18 years of service. Just kicking them out the door with no retirement benefits. I honestly do not have the words for how heartless and cruel that is, but that's what this regime thinks of people who have served our country. So much for supporting the troops, the war fighters, as Pete's always yelling and shouting about, from the drunk sex predator and the 5-time draft dodger and also sex predator who managed to make Purple Heart Day this week about himself.
That's some list. Thank you. It's amazing. Amazing. Last year, after an assassin tried to take my life in Butler, Pennsylvania, Thomas generously mailed me one of his Purple Hearts. Many of the other veterans showed me the same unbelievable gesture of kindness, including 3-time Purple Heart recipient John Ford and Gerald Enter Jr., who also came along with us and did us a great, great favor. Gerald, John, and Thomas, I want to thank you very much. What a great honor to get those Purple Hearts. I guess in a certain way, it wasn't that easy for me either when you think of it, but you went through a lot more than I did, and I appreciate it all very much.
When I saw that clip this week, I have to tell you, it made me like almost physically sick because I live in an area where there are, I think, the most military installations, U.S. military installations of anywhere else in the world. And the other day I saw somebody parked at the local Whole Foods market, farther away in the parking lot when I pulled in, and this person had a Purple Heart license plate. And I immediately thought to myself, no kidding. I was like, what are you doing parked all the way over here? Like, I wanted to run into Whole Foods and page, like, whoever has the Purple Heart license plate needs to be parked at the front of the store. Like, that is how much reverence that we have for Purple Heart recipients. Like, that much honor. And in fact, around here, there are often Purple Heart parking spaces that are just reserved for them. The Purple Heart recipients have that much respect and reverence from folks like us. So, I mean, that was my instant reaction. So right after that, I think, is when I saw Trump going on and on about, tougher for me. Like this orange clown, this obese McCankle's orange clown, comparing himself to these people, these heroes who have sacrificed everything for our country. In fact, here's one of them. Here's Jun Park, a Purple Heart recipient Army veteran who took a bullet in the back for America. He ended up with debilitating PTSD and a drug addiction because of that PTSD that he did eventually beat. He was a green card holder in the United States since he was a 7-year-old child. Guess what the Trump regime did to this Purple Heart recipient? They deported him a few months ago back to South Korea, away from his children and his friends, after everything he sacrificed for our country. Mr. Park is the best of America, not the worst. The Trump regime is lying to us. They sent this beautiful man away from his family and friends after the tremendous sacrifice that he gave up for our nation. I mean, it's stories like this that just juice me to keep on going, to keep sharing what is at stake right now and why we must keep fighting to restore our nation away from these white nationalist monsters who stole it from us. And on that note, people like Pete Hegseth and clearly Donald Trump, who is also a white supremacist, and the people who support him. I mean, make no mistake. Like, I'm not going to mince words. People who, after 10 years of Donald Trump being in the public eye, like, you can't mistake who he is. He is a white nationalist, white supremacist. He does not like people of color. He hates women. Like, you can't feign ignorance at this point. This is who these people are. And the problem with our country is that we never dealt with the aftermath of the Civil War the way that we should have. And that's how we ended up with Jim Crow laws and all of the things that have led us to allowing someone like Donald Trump and people like Pete Hegseth to get to the highest echelons of the government. We never dealt with America's original sin, which is misogyny and racism. And we need to deal with it appropriately. That's what they did after World War II in Europe, where swastikas, where Confederate flags even, you can't put statues of the Third Reich up anywhere in Europe. Like, it's not allowed, and for good reason. They swatted that down. And yes, there may be like bubble ups of white nationalism popping up around Europe, but by and large, they knocked that down. They learned their lesson in Europe, in Austria and Germany after the rise of Hitler and Mussolini. And we haven't learned that. And that is how we have allowed this monstrous regime to come into power, because America, we haven't learned the lessons yet that we should have after our Civil War. And I hope that this time we finally get it through our skulls, that we can never allow this kind of monstrosity, this horrible type of regime to come to power in America again. And with that, I will leave you guys. Peace out to you.
Love this video? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch and help us blow past 1 million followers.